Hey, here's just a few things to think about on this Thanksgiving Sunday, and going to draw them out of Philippians 4, verse 6 to 7, which says this: Don't worry about anything. Rather, in every area of life, let God know what you want. As you pray and worship, you make your requests and give thanks as well. And God's peace, which is greater than we can ever understand, will guard your hearts and minds in King Jesus. Pray. The cure for worry is presented here as prayer. It is the translation of a Greek word which speaks of prayer that is addressed to God as an act of worship and devotion. So it's a very interesting word. It's a little bit different than just leaning into intercession. It's not just making requests to God. It's in this atmosphere of worship and devotion, moving in and out of liturgical expression and music even, that our prayers come up before the Lord. So again, don't worry about anything. Rather, in every area of life, let God know what you want as you pray, worship, and make requests, and give thanks as well. And God's peace, which is greater than we can ever understand, will guard your hearts and minds in King Jesus. Thanks and peace. The construct of the language here holds thanks at the very center of the text. If you think about these verses like a wheel, and there's a hub of the wheel and all these other spokes, thanks is actually like at the center, at the hub. The hinge, if you will, of a gate that you would open and close and move into other expressions of life. The hinge is thankfulness. It's a non-anxious posture of prayer and worship whose inevitable result is peace. Now, we've talked about this so many times in this journey of KVine these last years. So let's go back to this definition again, which I know you've heard over and over, but every time I look at it, it sparks some kind of fresh understanding of peace to me. It's derived from shalom, out of the Hebrew. The root in the Hebrew is a word shalom, and it means to be safe in your mind, mental health, in your body, a settledness and a peacefulness in your limbs, in your bones, in your flesh, non-anxious presence, or a state, your entire being, completeness, fullness, the opposite of scarcity, a wholeness that encourages you to give back, to generously repay. This breaks the back of religious obligation and all our rhythms of compassion and generosity and love, engagement with the poor, with the marginalized, with those that are on the outer fringes of justice and those that we stand in solidarity with. It removes all that sense of obligation or duty. It's out of a place of peace that we generously repay. It is an inward completeness, and I love this, in inward completeness resulting in an outward wholeness to the point of the absence of war. The understanding of thankfulness engendered within the biblical narrative is one that is cultivated and sustained from this place of peace and wholeness. Peace and thankfulness flow in and out of each other, a beautiful resonance at the heart of a worshiping life. It taps something beyond simply counting one's blessings, or it certainly goes way beyond that of positive confession. It is leaning into this place of deep gratitude and thankfulness. But there's the recognition that there is a source. Our thankfulness is in the frame of a cosmic picture, a large understanding of the sovereign grace and mercy of God. There is something, someone that is beyond ourselves. It is quite remarkable that our First Nations and Indigenous people have woven into their traditions and celebrations that of Thanksgiving, which is actually where we get this whole thing from. They've anchored it to the Creator long before the arrival of the Europeans. It wasn't just about harvest or community. There was a deep reverence for the Creator. Listen to this Mi'kmaq prayer that comes from the very east coast of Canada, the very first peoples that would have encountered Europeans. And this prayer predates the arrival of Europeans by many, many years. Creator, open our hearts to peace and healing between all people. Creator, open our hearts to provide and protect all children of the earth. Creator, open our hearts to respect for the earth and all the gifts of the earth. Creator, open our hearts to end exclusion, violence, and fear among all. Thank you. Thank you for the gifts of this day and every day. Thankfulness, the posture of gratitude, and that of positive thinking are actually quite different. One psychologist says positive thinking is what we do when we don't want to deal with the yuck. It's the mentality of take it until you make it. This can be useful when you need to psych yourself up or alter a crummy mood, but it really doesn't have the capacity to change the direction of your mind. A sense of deep gratefulness, especially when circumstance would dictate otherwise, actually affects the limbic system of the brain. It actually does something physically to your very brain and serves to rewire the neurons that are required for a sense of well-being and a generous disposition. This is beyond just talking your way out of something. It's coming from a very, very deep place in your gut that actually affects the wiring of your brain. Listen to the words of Joel Wong, PhD, and Joshua Brown, another PhD, who've written on this subject. When people feel more grateful, their brain activity is distinct from brain activity related to guilt and the desire to help a cause. Isn't that interesting how those two are wound together? People who are more grateful are also more generous. Remember the definition of peace that comes out of the Hebrew? And show greater neural sensitivity in their medial prefrontal cortex, a brain area associated with learning and decision making. Gratitude has lasting effects on the brain and contributes to improved mental health over time. Much of our time and energy is spent pursuing things we currently don't have. Gratitude, though, reverses our priorities and helps us appreciate the people and things we have now, the moment. G.K. Chesterton, one of my favorite authors, says this. You say grace before meals, all right, but I say grace before the concert and the opera, and grace before the play and the pantomime, and grace before I open a book, and grace before sketching, painting, swimming, fencing, boxing, walking, playing, dancing, and grace before I dip the pen in ink. When it comes to life, the critical thing is whether you take things for granted or take them with gratitude. Gratitude was such a vital part of Israel's religion. It pervaded most of the ceremonies and customs. They were known as thank offerings. They all were in the spirit of thanksgiving and worship. Songs of praise, shouts of joy, music and dance, feasts and festivals were celebrated in remembrance of God's steadfast love throughout their history. King David appointed Levitical priests specifically to offer thanks to God. The custom was carried on by the kings in Solomon and Hezekiah and by those who returned from the exile. We move to the New Testament, and the object of thanksgiving is the love of God expressed in the redemptive work of Christ. The Apostle Paul thanked God for that gift of grace and the ability to preach the gospel. Paul thankfully participated in the spiritual gifts. Gratitude for love and faith among believers pervades all of the epistles and letters of the New Testament. Because the expression of gratitude is tied so closely to the response of faith, Paul encouraged believers to give thanks in all things. He commanded Christians to pray with thanksgiving in the name of Christ, who has made all thanksgiving possible. In his teaching on how to celebrate the Lord's Supper, Paul specified that Christians should give thanks just as the Lord had given thanks. Now, something super, super interesting here. We celebrate on a very regular, consistent basis. We talk a lot about the Eucharist. Well, what the word actually means, Eucharistia, in the Greek, means thanksgiving. We come to the table. It is in a heart of thanks. It would make a great difference, would it not, if our posture toward life were that we received it as a gift with gratitude and wonder. If our hands were open to receive and give rather than clutched to take and keep. So, thankfulness, gratitude. It allows us to engage with life as it is. We can actually look at the raw data, the stuff that we're experiencing, the things right in our face. And without a plastic smile or fake platitudes, we can draw from a deep place of contentment and resolute faith and step into a place of gratitude and find something in the moment that anchors us, and as we've heard, actually changes the neural and the neurons that are firing in our minds. Gratitude allows us to dream without getting lost in fantasy. It anchors us to the real, to the now. Gratitude allows us to not reach for the escape hatch, but to dream dreams that actually change us, change our circumstance, and change the people around us. And gratitude allows us to reach for more, whether we see it all on this earth or not. It allows us to reach for more, free of a bitter taste, where we're not reaching for change and growth and health and healing and hope from a place of anger and bitterness, but from a place of solid gratitude. We reach for more, and it changes the whole game. It changes the whole game. Wendell Berry says this: we live the given life and not the planned. Don't worry about anything. Rather, in every area of life, let God know what you want. As you pray, worship, and make requests, and give thanks as well. And God's peace, which is greater than we can ever understand, will guard your hearts and minds in King Jesus.